So while preparing for this session, I was actually thinking of what is a relatable analogy or story to start with. And I asked myself, what are the things that I would need if I wanted to lead a rich life, a full life? The first thing was food and water. The second was sleep. The third was exercise, fitness, well-being. The fourth, unattractive answer, but important nevertheless, money. The fifth was love and meaningful relationships. And the sixth was purpose. You know, what drives me to wake up every morning. And probably in today's world, the seventh would be Wi-Fi. Now, if you take away any one of those ingredients away from the equation, the quality of my life would probably take a beating. And I think it's important to kind of take that analogy and think about what we're trying to do with virtual learning, or what we're trying to do with learning in general. And the ingredients that I think are important before you dive in too much into a digital solution or a digital platform is what I've put together here, which is the learning framework. And the ingredients that you're seeing there are, first is content, second, technology, third, analytics, fourth, capability, our own capability, fifth, culture, and sixth, experience. And just one line on each of these, and then I'm happy to open it to the panelists. So I think content will always be king because content solves the problem, but context is always going to be the queen because it actually ensures that you're asking the right question to which you're trying to find the answer. And therefore, because of this explosion of digital content, I think the skill of the learning community to curate themselves and to find the right curators is going to be a forever skill. Next, technology. I'm just going to ask you to follow Josh Bersin on LinkedIn and on his website if you want to know what's happening in the technology space. So, you know, is the LMS alive, dead? Is LXP alive, dead? What's happening with Microsoft Teams? But when I worked with Deloitte, they gave us a really interesting insight and said high impact learning organizations don't invest only in learning technology. They use all available technology to craft learning experiences. And I think that's an idea worth carrying with us. On data and analytics, it's a weakness for me, but I think it's a very important skill for the learning community. And I was thinking, you know, all of us think we're watching Netflix, but Netflix with deep respect is watching us. And I think we need to have a similar mindset in the learning community. You know, where are people clicking? What are they liking? What are they sharing? What are they commenting? And then actually making decisions based on that data. I again think that's a really important anchor in our framework. The fourth is our own capability. We don't have the luxury of telling others what to do about their development and their learning mindset if we are not walking the talk on that ourselves. So, you know, when was the last time you went out and got a design thinking certification or an agile certification? How are you investing in yourself? And the last two, culture. I'm going to put my hands up and say, I don't know what this means. But I can tell you as an employee in a company, whether it's working or whether it's not working. It's a bit like the air that you breathe. If I had to disproportionately invest somewhere, I'd invest in culture because you can get everything else right. But if you have a fear culture in your company, you're basically dead. And the last is experience. All this has to make sense to that unique individual. So how do you take all this, put it together in a scalable way, but still deliver personalized experience for people is really where I think the holy grail lies. And with that, I'll stop. I've gone over by 30 seconds and I'll open.
Therefore need to use that reflection space appropriately and in multiple ways. Yeah. So when it comes to holding sessions for their teams, the first thing is leaders need to make them brief and short, as Jyoti, Divakar, all of you have already said. Leaders structure the work before they send it out and communicate it out. Yeah. Which may seem like, you know, controlling rather than autonomy, but it's actually autonomy, because once you structure things out, you're saying that this piece is for you to do and we need to hear from you when it's done. Yeah. And it's also important, therefore, that leaders set expectations that people will help one another. There's a lot to help people on.
Space. You know, a couple of things. What I'm seeing around there, you know, we're talking a lot about, you know, creating these learning organizations. Jyoti mentioned that herself. You know, I'm seeing a lot more on the other side, organizational learning, right? So what's this institutional learning that we take forward to help us navigate the future. And a lot of companies are looking back to say, ooh, what can I pull from my past to help me now? Truth is, they've dealt with adversity in the past, but this is something new, right? And now they're saying, well, how can I scramble to learn within what's happening now so that I can be fit for the future going forward? So I think it's this organizational learning that we're trying to scramble to understand what it means. And in the context of learning, I think there's two aspects that I want to touch on here. One is culture. And Jyoti mentioned, I love some of what you were saying. It's, the air that you breathe, as you said. And then how does that relate to learning and what we think about learning and sponsorship at an org level? And then around adoption. Well, how do we really look at adoption of these things? We talked about sustained integration into these learning platforms, but there's a difference between just driving action and actually driving adoption. So first, real quick, to show you, to ground you, I think a lot of experts on the call anyway, so I certainly don't want to talk down. But just to replay, if I see culture, I see the pyramid as we all have experiences, right? Every day in the activities we do. These fundamentally build our beliefs, and what we believe is what drives the behaviors, and then we see the collective patterns of behavior, we can call as culture, driving these results. Right. So even if we think about sponsorship in this space, how do we really start leaning into this culture of learning? We need to ensure that as an organization, the fundamental organizational beliefs are that learning is something that's useful, that's going to drive performance. And in finding sponsorship, we need to find those leaders that, again, fundamentally believe that if I invest in the learning of my people, then they will be engaged and drive ultimately results for our stakeholders, shareholders, and customers, right? So keep that in the back of your mind as we think about adoption, right? It truly is about a vision or a view of shifting beliefs, and what we see as behaviors. That's why we measure behaviors, because it's easy, we can see them, but it's really about, so if you look at the bottom there, we have adoption, right? And it's made up of three things, and I'll put a very brief equation here of how I see adoption playing out. And it's really a sum of these things that you see in front of you, right? Positive user experience plus commitment plus action. What does that mean? Positive user experience. I go in, there's some, let's say an online learning, and it's great. I love it. It looks good. It looks easy to use. Nothing happens. That's not enough to drive adoption, right? Commitment is the next step. Oh, wow, I like what I see, and therefore I really can see how it's a value to me. That's commitment. Still not adoption, because I haven't done anything at this point. I just looked at it, I thought it was great, and I could see how it helps me. The last one is action. I will now actually actively do something, and those three drive adoption. Take any of those out. Without a positive user experience, you won't do anything, right? Without that commitment, what you get is compliance, right? Yeah, it looks good, and I have to do action because my boss told me, right? But that's only compliance, it's not adoption. And if you have positive user experience, again, and commitment, you're not doing anything. You don't have action. You haven't actually done anything. So I think, if you're thinking about culture and how do we wrap all this together, it's really an opportunity now that we have distance, and not just social distancing, but digital distance, as we're all each in our own places of home. And we're starting to see a different view of what learning can look like. So we need to think about, what does that mean culturally? How do we start shifting those beliefs?
Discussables that are coming up. What are the things that are under the carpet? One, when we move from physical to virtual, the first one that's going to happen is that people are going to have excess psychic energy. What does that mean? They have excess mental energy. What does that mean? That means that if we had a survey right now on the Mentimeter, that how many of you are multi-screening? How many of you are, take it in inverted commas, cheating on your attention spare, a mind share, throat share, eyeball share? So what happens is that the moment people are on mute, the moment they are not on video, their monkey mind, their wandering mind has got full freedom to go wherever it has to. And that's going to be one big issue. Freedom can become licentiousness in terms of mindfulness. That's one thing that we'll need to take care of, which leads to then attention disorder, and which then leads to the confidence of the moderator, because the moderator is trying to say something and people are not responding. But in great sessions, what happens is that people forget whether it is a virtual session or a real session, because there's deep engagement. When you're in flow, there is self-forgetfulness, you become the golf ball. So there is no difference between the golf club and the golf ball, and Nihali Chicks and Nihai wins, Karam Yog wins. Which then brings me to why I gave the compliment to Jyoti. Which brings us to the main thing, content is the king, but she really completed that sentence by saying, but context is the queen. There are various types of people sitting there. So if content is not the king and the moderator goes on talking, then very soon people who are now not locked eyeball to eyeball with the trainer, where the trainer moderator does not capture them by their body language, what happens is they go away. So cliched wisdom begins to suck. And the more you keep talking about stuff that they already know, their mind says, hey, meanwhile, let me accept this on LinkedIn. Meanwhile, let me Google on Devakar Roshali. Meanwhile, let me Google on Yadav Mehra. Now that becomes a very big challenge. So that's one of the undiscussables. So obviously, that's where LeadPro comes in. That's where Devakar comes in. So one, content is the king, context is the queen. Really, the content has to be, right now, imagine, I mean, we've got about 100 people listening. Right now, if I started talking about how to handle a hysterical husband, nagging wife, pestering child, shakuni boss, sharp colleague, suddenly the eyeballs are back. Suddenly the attention span is back, which is why if we are catering to the within of the audience, which is what's in it for me, then suddenly virtual is real. But virtual does not become real very easily unless content is king and queen. I think this company, Shubham and Devakar, will play a big role in getting all your senses involved, which is Gyanindriya, Karamindriya, organs of action, organs of perception. We got to make people click their fingers, they've got to see, they've got to hear. They can't smell the computer, unfortunately, and they can have their coffees together and say, what are you having? So I think the experiences will have to become multisensory. One more thing, I've got 1.5 minutes. One more thing is campuses are gone for some time, and that's good news for smaller companies. I was losing businesses to campuses of INSEAD and ISB, and people would want to go and stay in the hostels there. But now they have a campus, so do I. So I think there's a lot of transparency that comes with technology. So people have to watch out for their competence and also not so competence. So I think is a great leveler. So that's going to be another one. And personally, I feel the job of the moderator has become quite difficult. I've just done a session in the morning with one of the big fours. And I had about 30 people, and all of them are muted, and all of them are on a WebEx. It's not even a Zoom, and WebEx is a heavy platform. It's not user-friendly, can't transition, can't write so easily. Sharing screen is a bit slow, but it's a robust platform. Now, what I told them early enough in the session is that, look, gone are the days where it's my job to entertain you. I'm not here to entertain you. We've got to share the responsibility of your learning. So discuss that upfront. Take it from right under the carpet, put it on the table, and say, look, we got to share the burden. I'm not going to say, you hooked off, you vanished, your dog came, your child came. It's okay. Your dog comes, we'll do together something about it. Last one in my 9 seconds is, we got to remember, internet is still not as smooth as electricity. We got glitches, and Devakar, thanks for joining this session on the phone, because I know you lost your broadband, but you are one cool guy who joins this session with your phone. Thank you very much for smiling. My 5 minutes are up. Thank you.
Feel that people who have had this experience of working online for some time, whether across geographies or not, they have taken to this quite easily. Yes, so I kind of relate with what you're saying, Shivam. It has helped.
The first mover often wins is a myth that is quickly being dispelled. And I think it's the same in this space. Will they have a competitive advantage? If so, it'll dry up very, very quickly, right? Especially if we pull the new generations that are coming in and our digital natives in a way that for us old timers, it looks different. I honestly think the others will quickly catch up, and there won't be that much of a difference.
I think from a overall organization culture point of view, yes. So nobody walks into meeting rooms anyway. They still do it on Zoom, even if they're in the same campus. And it's quite seamless. People feel comfortable sharing their videos and photos. I haven't seen people going on, people have moved from telephone conferencing to kind of video conferencing very smoothly. So they're much more, less anxious around who is going to judge and what I'm going to look like and stuff like that. I think that's for sure in a formal setting. But I think ease of using technology, it's more universal. It's not corporate driven. I think I see people in India as or maybe more tuned to the latest in technology using smartphones, etc.
My passion for design thinking and respond to that question. I would use the discipline of the design thinking tools, and just very quickly, if Divakar is going to share, there's a fabulous resource, lumaworkplace.com. They give a 30-day free trial and access to 36 outstanding design thinking tools. When someone doesn't use our digital resources, we should be careful not to rush to conclusions on the why. And that's where I'd use the tool. There's a fabulous tool called Contextual Survey, where you do an interview with somebody, but at their workplace. Because when you do an interview with someone on the phone, they can say things that they believe are true, but they're actually doing something different. But when you go and sit with someone, or you virtually talk to somebody and observe what they're doing, you'll find that there's a difference between what they say and what they're actually doing. So somebody doesn't take on your digital products. The why? Is it the product? Is it their context? Is it architecture? Is it internet? I think it's really important to use those design thinking tools to actually come down to that. And I posted this on the chat. One of the other forever skills for the learning community, like for many communities, is going to be digital marketing. You're going to have to show value in less than a minute, maybe 10 seconds, or in one phrase to people on your product. So again, I think that is very important. Is it that you're just not reaching enough people and it's not so much a problem with the product? So I'd ask a lot of questions.
Would be the same one. You know, we're looking a lot of at agile ways of working, for example, right? This concept of minimal viable product, right? So the problem is we've always thought big, especially now at scale. Okay, you know, the answer is digital learning. Let's scale up and get everybody on board, and LMS, make the experience right, get LinkedIn Learning, and get Coursera and Toshiba, and let's stitch together this perfect scalable enterprise solution. And the CFO says, how much was that? And it quickly burns and crashes, right? So I think, you know, this is where we take a page out of Agile and say, well, what's the need? What's the minimal viable product? And there's stuff out there that's easily accessible. You know, you bring something in at a different lower cost to prove value, and then scale as the value is seen by the user versus the L&D community, right? So you almost turn it around and get more into a pull than a push mindset, and drive value small and then scale, is how I would see it.
If I were to just add to that, I think there are specialists in the analytics space today. I think there would be a mistake for the learning community to try and become data scientists or behavioral analysts, but there are brilliant companies. And here's, you know, a curator doesn't just know content. A curator also knows experts and people. And I think when it comes to analytics, we've got to go out and find those people. So like I've worked with a company called Qualtrics, outstanding on digital analytics. Especially with digital solutions and platforms, the amount of data and analytics that's available is phenomenal. But I think my question is, how many of us have taken good quality decisions on the basis of that data?
And I would say from an adoption perspective, we need to combine both of those areas, right? So I think, you know, we brought people insights and analytics into our team for this exact reason, right? So, you know, we measure a lot of system usage data, which only tells you compliance or maybe usage. But, you know, we also have to go have those one-on-one conversations to see, well, what was the actual experience? And then combine these things through analytics so we can get from the descriptive analytics into the actually prescriptive and predictive, right? So what is this telling us? And we need to stitch all these different pieces together in order to really see, are we getting the value from our offerings?
Delivery mechanisms. The real question is, what's the learning agenda? How clear, in my mind, how clear was it? How clearly was it linked to workplace outcomes? If that link was not well defined in the first place, it doesn't matter what you do later on. That the why of learning has to be defined. No questions.
I mean, this has always been the holy grail, right? Whether it's virtual learning or otherwise, am I really getting value and driving performance through the learning offerings I have, right? So I know everyone's always wanted to crack that. And I think, in this case, I go back to Agile again. One of the things we're playing with is simple experimentation, right? Almost A/B testing. So we have two different similar, say, commercial groups. One will start a learning offering, for example, aimed specifically at the why. What are we trying to get out of? And the other one we won't. And then we compare some metrics at the end. Did one group outpace or outperform the other? And then we can start attributing to